This is the Richmond Planning Commission, and it is the meeting for Wednesday, March the 4th, 2026. So welcome, everybody. And our guests, we have a couple of, one guest. That's good. So we're going to start out by looking at the agenda and taking any public comments on non-agenda items. I realize that we really won't get through this whole agenda, but that's okay. If we have a lot of spare time, then we can get there. So going to continue our talk about the stormwater, make some progress there in figuring out exactly what we're going to do there. Then we're going to look at Keith's red line of his minor and technical corrections through section 5, the end of section 5. So we'll just skip through that, go through it and look at each one and go, yep.
Pretty quick.
That shouldn't take too long. There's a couple that people might have questions about, but so we'll do that second. And then if we have time, we will look once again at the red line of the village RC district, residential commercial. So there are 4 districts that we need to bring up to speed for Act 47 and 181. This one, the village residential commercial, very easy to do because it was almost there anyway. I would like to have them all 4 brought up to speed and do a public hearing on all of them all at once. So we'll get them taken care of and in our back pocket and then have a public hearing on them. The second one is the village commercial, which we may or may not get to start tonight. Then there's the VD, the village downtown, that weird district there downtown with Mark's favorite density. So that one, and then the JC district, which is pretty much fine, but there's a couple of things I think maybe that might need a little bit of adjustment. So those 4 districts, we just need to make sure that they say the same thing that 47 and 181 say. They are all the ones in the village water and sewer district. So that's the plan. We may not get to the last couple of these things depending on how long the rest of it takes, but that's okay. Then other business, update on the town plan. Well, you might as well know it was approved. So that's good. Mm-hmm. Approved by a good margin. So we can be happy about that, right? We don't have to work on it anymore. We can work on some of these things.
Well, I'm flipping ecstatic.
Yeah, everybody looks to be smiling and
Oh, congratulations to you guys. That was a big deal.
It was a big deal. It was a good group and
together and got it through with minimal controversy.
Yeah, it
relatively speaking.
It was overwhelmingly approved. So it wasn't just like by 1 or 2 votes. So so and Keith has a few things that he has to do. We have to make some printed, a little bit of small number of printed copies. So Keith is going to go through and proofread it one more time and make sure the typos are fixed and the formatting looks good. And
it'll never be perfect.
No, it will never be perfect, but it's gotten better every time we proofread it. So, and it has to go to regional planning.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wouldn't print that. I wouldn't put it to the printers until after we get the approval there, because we'll need that date on there.
Yep. We'll need the date and the certification of the energy plan date will have to be on there. And we are assuming that they are good with it. So, but they have to give the official stamp of approval.
Yep.
So that's that other business. We've already taken care of it, but that's all right. Anyone have any changes that they want to make to the agenda?
No.
I'm hoping to talk quite a bit about the stormwater thing today.
Just one thing. I didn't see anything about the RZR findings that Keith put together for the last meeting. And I was wondering when we were gonna get back into those. I did my homework this week. I did research. I read everything. and it's not on the agenda this week.
The
So
the technical corrections you're talking about?
yes,
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, I had the same problem, but what he did was he printed up the whole document. So if you
so
look
that
at
the added document has all those incorporated into it.
exactly.
Oh,
So
even better. Thank you.
yeah, I mean, what I did when I was looking at the meeting materials is I looked at that, I opened it, it looked like the zoning document. I went the first few pages, there
yeah,
was nothing different. I thought, oh, he's just put the zoning document here so we could see the whole
Red
zoning
dot.
document. But that's the one that has the red lines. So
no,
we'll
that's
go through it in that format, which
I saw there was a lot of markups on it, but I thought that might have just been edit notes from previously. And I was, I was going through his list of errata and finding the section in that kindly attached zoning.
right. Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, I think the title probably should have been a little clearer, like red line but I figured you guys are pretty intelligent, so.
oh, cool. Very, thank you.
and a few of them, Keith and I went through that list and
Great.
took out a few of the ones that were originally in the minor list, and we put them in the discussion list
Yep,
because they're worth more discussion than
right.
just was in that minor list. So, all right, any corrections to the agenda additions? Hi, Allison, we're glad you're here.
Hi.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here too.
Okay, good, good. All right, not hearing any additions or corrections or public comment on non-agenda items. Anyone? Okay, so we will proceed with the published agenda.
Okay.
Moving to number 3, we want to review the minutes of our last meeting, the 2/18 meeting. Anyone have any corrections?
Marcy here?
Yeah, Marcy is not here to offer any corrections today, so we'll, unless anyone has anything to say, we will go with that and accept it into the minutes as written.
Yeah.
And I underlined all the things that I said I would do by this meeting, which we can go over at some point.
Uh,
Okay,
Excuse me. I just want to announce
Yeah.
that should have done this earlier. My internet connection has been cutting out for the last 2 days very randomly.
okay,
And I may disappear, but I'll keep trying to get on. If I disappear. I got kicked off of my work this afternoon, and
oh,
once we get back in, I don't know what's going to happen tonight. But just a heads up, I might just
okay.
magically vaporize.
So we'll carry on with the meeting and fill you in with what happens.
We've got plenty of quorum.
Yes.
Yep,
Okay. So, not hearing any comments about those minutes, we will accept them into the record as written. Okay, so we're going to move on to our substantive agenda. Continued discussion of stormwater regulations and research where we're at. And I'm hoping that, so to me, this was a brand new subject area that I knew nothing about. So I've been slogging through the really basic questions about it and asking Keith a lot of like elementary questions. So if you have any questions about what it looks like, or just go ahead and ask them. It's kind of hard to get a grip. We're going to start with looking at the questions on Keith's write-up that he wrote for last time. So I don't know if you would like to screen share that or no.
yeah, I can do that. I do want to do a little preface on all this, though.
Okay.
But I certainly can screen share it. And I don't need to screen share the preface. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that an erosion control plan is not the same thing as a stormwater plan. There are two separate entities, yet they are related. So an erosion and sediment control plan, they call it an erosion protection control plan or something along that. I just call it ENS, erosion and sedimentation for short. So that's how I'm going to use it. And then you have stormwater controls. So erosion and sediment controls are controls that are installed on the ground during development to help mitigate stormwater runoff. It helps to stabilize the soil, keep it stabilized, but this is during an active project that's going on. Now, the stormwater controls are the permanent controls. So you can look at erosion and sedimentation as temporary controls for the most part. And stormwater controls or a plan is something that is permanent, that requires maintenance for the most part, and requires oversight. And most importantly, it requires an engineered design plan. So with that said, I want to make sure that everybody understands the two differences between the two, because the title of the section that we'll be writing will be erosion and sedimentation control and stormwater, or something along those lines. We'll package those two into one section is my thinking, instead of two separate sections. So erosion and sedimentation is a temporary measure. Some of them can be permanent. Obviously, vegetation is permanent. And then you have the stormwater control plan, which is your permanent controls of stormwater that is coming off of impervious surfaces. A lot of the issues with stormwater have to do with reduction of total maximum daily loads, of which phosphorus is the main load that they're trying to reduce. So with that preface, I just want to make sure everybody understands the differences between the two. They are interrelated, but they are not the same.
And we're going to go over that some more.
Yeah, and what I'll do at the end of all this is that what I want to do is go ahead and write a section and get that section in front of you, and then we could really start taking it apart on what we want to do. So let me pull the screen up to my sheet here, and then we can go over those questions.
Yeah, we'll go over the basic questions, which will lead us into the other questions that we will also be asking.
Okay, I assume everybody can see this. I make assumptions quite often. Let's do this. There you go.
It's on page 1.
I know where it is. It's right here.
Okay, if you want to make that a little bigger, that'd be great. Okay, so does it get bigger or doesn't get bigger?
I've got to move some things here to get to it.
much.
It's being
No.
blocked right now.
Okay.
There. Good. Yeah.
So, and some of these Keith and I went over them. We assume we know the answer to, but we want to have the commission restate their interest in it. So number 1, to what extent does the town wish to implement a stormwater and erosion and sedimentation section? I feel we already agreed on that, that we did. And it also relates to number 5, provide direction if this is a priority, and I feel we already decided that. So would anyone like to comment about number 1 and number 5?
Mhm.
Is this what we want to do?
Sure.
Yep,
I think so.
Yeah.
that's what I want to do.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
devoid in our current regulations right now. Not devoid, but very, very poorly. There's a very poor showing of this in our regulations. Let's put it to you that way.
Yes. So
Okay.
yes to number 1 and number 5. And we feel, Keith and I feel that we will have a single section, a whole section of its own. It will probably be in the 6s, like number 6.16 for the moment, until we do our reorganization of the document to make it more logical. But it'll be a section which will be called stormwater and sediment control and erosion prevention. EPSC are the initials that people use in the state. So, and there's in number 2, it says EPSC, that stands for erosion protection sedimentation control. So, and as Keith mentioned, we will have the two, some things will relate to the sedimentation and erosion part, some things will relate to the stormwater maintenance plan. So, all right, so everybody's okay with 1 and 5 being yes.
Mhm.
One
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
Um, these new regulations will apply to new projects only, or if someone pulls a permit to do a project
That's
of
it.
any kind on their property, will they be subject to these new regulations, or only if they're doing something that disturbs the land, or what?
Yeah, so as far as, again, let's keep in mind that there are two separate items here. It's erosion and sedimentation and stormwater. I don't think the intent is to require somebody who has already installed impervious surfaces to have to account for that at this point. I think that's pretty onerous. I
Mhm.
think it has to do with new development, Ian, and to account for that amount of impervious surface that you're proposing should have some type of control on it. Um, any land disturbance should have erosion and sediment control on it, regardless of how small it is. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, if it's a little hole in the ground, that's a different story. We already require that in our permit. It's just not promulgated in our,
So if I'm going to add a garage to my house,
yep.
okay.
I'd want to, yeah, we'd want to see, and we'd require on the site plan a silt fence down slope. Just some type of minimal control to keep that water from, or keep the sediment from going off the land.
And
And
Ian, there will be different, when we talk about the triggers or what this is applicable to, and we talk about if there is going to be land disturbance, this is going to apply to you. But depending on the amount of land disturbance
Mhm.
and the slope and the amount
Yep.
of impervious soil of land that's going to remain, there may be different levels. Like at some point, you just need a site plan, hand drawn with your berms and things on it.
right.
Mhm.
Over a certain size, you might need to have a professionally designed plan.
Mhm.
So there, it's going to apply to all land disturbances, but maybe to some different degrees. We will
Yep.
be putting that into the work here.
Right,
Okay.
and that's what we want to chew on, or what those triggers are eventually. And that I don't, it's kind of hard to do that with this document. I think you need an actual section that's ready to go, and we can go over it by section, but
Yeah.
that's another discussion.
So number two, we're going to talk about at much greater length,
Mhm.
but basically the thresholds there aren't that many things that are thresholds. There are three thresholds or triggers. There's the amount of land that is disturbed. There is the slope, and there's the amount of impervious surface that is going to remain at the end. That's the stormwater piece. So basically, those are the three triggers that we're going to talk about, and what each one of those is what we're going to talk about soon. But there's not an unlimited number of things. It's just a finite number of things, and the amount of land disturbed and the slope obviously has to do with primarily with the current, the construction phase.
Right.
The amount of impervious surface that remains, but also the slope, will have to do with the maintenance phase of the stormwater protection. So we're going to be talking about those and the numbers that relate to those as we go on a little bit further.
Yeah, I want to keep it as simple as possible too, because I mean, this can get dense with stormwater because you're talking about rainfall amounts, how frequent they are, and that is how you would size a system for stormwater, is based on the runoff, based on the frequency of storms. But I don't want to get stuck in that loop at all. So we'll just leave it at that. What I'd like to get stuck on or concentrate on are what triggers are how 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 light do we want to be, or how heavy do we want to be on these triggers?
And different towns vary in
Yep.
the amount of wordage that they have associated with this. So we're trying to strike that balance between making it fairly simple but comprehensible and, complete enough.
Mhm.
So we'll talk about how we're going to do that too in a minute. The other thing, since you brought up who this applies to, Ian, is the other thing that we're going to have in this draft that we'll put together, Keith will put together, is the purpose. And the purpose, obviously, is to protect water quality and to protect damage from runoff. So hopefully that is clear to everyone. We need to do the protection during the construction phase. We need to have planning for it, and we need to do it for maintenance afterwards. But it's all about protecting the water quality and keeping there from being damaged from runoff and the pollutants that may be entering the water. So hopefully everybody is good with that. All right, so the next item, number 3, if proposed. Well, we can strike if proposed because we have proposed it. What best management practices or guidance are offered? And what I would like to suggest is that we have our 2 basic guidebooks or handbooks that we're going to be referring to and be listing. One is the low risk development handbook. And this is for small projects that don't require a state stormwater permit. So at a certain size, and we can talk about that when we talk about the numbers, at a certain size, you have to have a state permit, and the state handles these details and decides if you're adhering properly. What we're looking at is those land disturbances that are smaller than what the state requires a permit for. That's what we are aiming to protect with our regulations. So that's going to be the low risk development handbook. And what I would like to do is lift some categories of things out of that handbook and put them actually in our regulations so that it's not just like, oh, you're going to disturb the land, you have to go look at this handbook. I want people to, applicants, because I come at it from an applicant's point of view, I want people to be able to have some idea what it is that we're looking for. So that's the one that talks about the EPSC piece, the erosion piece. Then the other handbook is for the stormwater management piece, and that's the low impact development handbook, which talks about the management. So those are going to be the 2 main references, and there will be some other secondary ones, but these are the 2 main references that we're going to send people to through our regulations for guidance beyond the basic rules that we're going to put actually into the statute. So I'm hoping that that is okay with people. Anybody have anything to say about that?
No, that's good.
Yeah, and it gives people a lot of alternatives. For instance, you know, if you say, okay, you are required to control runoff from above your project into the disturbed area where it may pick up sediment.
Mhm.
There are options for doing that. You know, you can put these straw-filled sock things, you know, they're like tubes of cloth in the way. You can use fencing, you can use ditching. There are different ways that you can adhere to that requirement. So those are the kinds of things you would get out of these guidebooks.
And to carry on with what Virginia's saying, we would want to list that in that section. We'd want to reference at least some examples of what we would be looking for. So if somebody is starting a project, they can look at the regulations and say, okay, we're going to have to do this in our design. And this is being offered. And then when they come in and we talk about it and we see what the slopes are on the land, where the wetlands are, what's impervious now, we can help them design towards that. And that's assuming that they don't need a professional designer to do that though either. And that leads back to the triggering mechanisms.
Yeah, and you know, I'm hoping that we structure it so that we have what you have to do when you start your project before you actually start the digging. You have to have the pre-construction phase where you have to have a site plan if you're going to disturb the land. You have to have a plan as to how you're going to manage it. even all the way through the end where there's stormwater runoff, how are you going to manage it when you have how much impervious surface, whatever amount you have, how are you going to manage it? So in that section, people will be able to know up front when they apply that these are the things that we're going to require about stormwater. So it's going to be transparently in front of people, the
Yeah.
basic concepts. So does that seem to be making sense?
I think so.
Yeah, and it will be easier, you know, for me, I had to write my own
Sections.
policy to look
Ah.
at it to see what it was we were talking about because it was hard for me to visualize the shape of the whole policy. Anyway, so we get to number 4. Keith says that there are internal policies based on the nature of the project, but these are not listed. And the goal is to get all those internal policies out there in the world
Yeah.
so that the applicant knows what they are ahead of time. They are not hidden away in the planning department. It's right here in this regulation that is in front of them.
Hmm.
Okay. So any comments about those before we go into some more specific points about the questions?
I would add that a good representative plan is the Huntington plan. And I don't know about the way the format is. I'm not wild about that, but that's a good one to really cut your teeth on, I believe, because we have the same type of landforms that Huntington has here.
Yeah.
So it is analogous. Jericho, not so much. Williston, not so much. Bolton, a lot, but Bolton doesn't have a ton. But the Huntington one seems to almost hit the mark. I don't like the way it's worded, but I do like the subject matter, and that's my 2 cents. And that's my suggestion if you want to come up to speed on what we're talking about. That's a good representative.
And it also seems to make the right balance between it being fairly simple and readable,
Right.
but also, you know, having some content. Like here are the things that we expect you to be doing, like preventing water coming down the hill onto your disturbed land. Then there's preventing water from leaving your disturbed land. And, you know, here are some ways that you can do it, but you can also go to this handbook, which has lots of other ways that talk about best practices. So, okay, so what we want to talk about now is kind of related to number 2 on this list. It's the triggers or what you have to do in your particular situation, in any of your situation. And then we're going to try to fit these into, you know, then we're going to take what we've got and try to fit it into our document. But so talking about the triggers or what is required when. The first phase is the pre-construction phase, when you need to plan for what you're going to do. And I think, Keith, you can correct me if I'm wrong about what we discussed this morning, but basically any disturbance, land disturbance of any size, which is any construction project, you have to have a site plan that has considerations, certain considerations for erosion and sedimentation control, and also for what your stormwater maintenance is going to look like after you're done. So any land disturbance in any district, you need the site plan. And I know that there's more of a concern in the village because now we're required to have this density. There's nowhere to put, you know, there's no infiltration possibilities because we're taking away the land that would take up the water. So this is why it's going to be super important in the village areas, especially to make sure that people are planning properly for how this is going to happen. So that's a big thing. A site plan is going to be required. And then we talked about the fact that over a certain size, you're going to have a professionally designed site plan.
Right.
And we talked about 10,000 square feet. That's a quarter of an acre that some other towns have. So if you are doing something under a quarter of an acre of disturbed soil, then you still need a site plan, but it doesn't have to be professionally designed.
Right.
Okay, so we're trying to balance the cost of this. You know, all of these things add cost to development, and we're trying to have more housing. You don't want more cost, but anyway, we don't want more stormwater either.
So, I'm sorry, could I just interrupt quickly?
Yeah, go ahead,
Uh,
anytime. Yeah.
You're talking about like anything more than quarter acre development, et cetera. But I'm wondering if we shouldn't also be thinking about any kind of percent lot coverage. So a quarter acre on 10 acres, what are we worried about? Quarter acre on a third acre, big difference.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. But as far as erosion and sediment control, it's kind of a blanket. You got to give us something. It's got to be stabilized at some point. The stormwater is another issue, though. That is much more
Right.
difficult in the urban area or in the built out areas. That's the type of triggers we're talking about. And the most important one of that is the frequency of storm. That's what we have to discuss. And we'll make it as easy as I'll make it as easy as possible. And I have an idea that we can go down also. But that's a great question. I mean,
And
absolutely.
the other thing about that question, Mark, is that it may be that we want to have different standards, you know, like
Different districts.
there may be for the village and for the AR, you know. I mean, this relates to your question about the size of the whole
Oh.
lot, the ratio of the disturbed land
Percentage
to
of
the
the
lot
lot
size.
and the slope.
Yeah.
Well,
You're
yeah,
worried about all this extra effort for a quarter acre, a 1 acre development on a flat 10 acres isn't going to have nearly the impact of something that has a 15% slope.
yeah. So we're going to get to slope. That's the second one of the triggers. The first one is how
Disturbance.
much land disturbance are you talking about? And this is where, yeah, it's good that you're thinking about the fact that it's different out in the rural areas than in the village. And we'll have to figure out as we talk about this how we're going to distinguish between those two areas. Do we want something in each district that talks about the trigger, or do we want something, for instance, in the village versus in the AR? That would be another way to do it, so that you capture the lot sizes.
Mhm. Keep in mind, this is small development. This isn't, the 1 acre is already triggered by the state requirements.
Right. So all this is talking about is land disturbance between a quarter of an acre and 1 acre. Over 1 acre, you have to have the state stormwater permit.
I would go less than a quarter acre.
Less than a quarter acre, you still have to have a site plan, but it doesn't have to be professionally developed.
Doesn't need a stamp.
Right.
But it has to be in with your application.
Okay, for sediment control during the construction, sure, I can see that as a reasonable temporary solution, but long term, I think there has to be something that if you're developing an eighth of an acre on a
Eighth of an acre lot.
right, really a quarter acre lot even, you're dealing with a significant reduction in permeable surfaces. Sorry, I keep stepping. I know Ian's got a question.
It's okay.
Yeah, so, but just one to follow up with your question, are you thinking that a professionally designed plan is needed for any amount of land disturbance?
No, no,
Okay.
percentages and slopes.
Well, we haven't got to slopes yet, but we will
I
get
know,
to
but
slopes.
yes,
Yeah,
then yes, percentage. If we're just talking percentage, yes, even under percentages,
Yep.
there's a certain percentage factor that should trigger a professional, competent
right. So you're
stormwater.
thinking rather than a specific number of square feet, more like a percentage of the lot.
Yes,
That it's going to be impervious versus, this is for the stormwater part, the post-construction phase.
So it's good to get that down on paper is, what is that going to look like from an administrative point of view too, Mark?
no,
I'm gonna disagree with that.
Okay, go ahead, Ian, you've got your hand up.
Well, sorry. Just because like people can buy a 10-acre lot, and if their building envelope is like right by the roadside, like the edge of their property,
that's true.
it's gonna dump. And if if there's a steep slope right there too, it kind of mitigates the benefit of having a bigger lot, So I don't know I totally hear what Mark's saying. It makes perfect sense, except in those instances where the building envelope is very close to the road.
I don't think they're contradictory. I think they're complementary. Your
Yeah.
point, it's a very good point that if it's near the edge, then that has a factor far more than developing an acre in the middle of a 10-acre lot. You're developing an acre abutting someone else's property. There's a whole different world
Right.
there. That's a
That too. I
really
didn't
good
think of
point.
that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and it may be that is addressed in the standards for the site plan. Since everybody is required to have a site plan if they're disturbing any amount of land. So that site plan is going to show whether the development is in the middle of the lot or near the road.
Right.
So we may be able to address it in the review of the site plan.
And we also have to, I have to understand exactly what our current stormwater structures are in the town too, and where their locations are, because that's also going to dictate how a design is going to be put on a piece of paper. If a person can't design their parcel because of limitations, but let's say there's a drop inlet just off their property, are they able to direct that stormwater to that drop inlet that the town owns? I don't know. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, and there's no way
Yeah,
it's going to be
and
done overnight.
we'll have to have somebody from the highway department, presumably Pete, or someone who knows what the stormwater system in the village is actually. And if there's a map of it, or is there a set of swales somewhere that we should know about, or pipes, or anyway. So we will schedule someone to come in from the highway department to talk to us about the existing system.
So definitely got to get my arms wrapped around what we currently have. I don't have that in front of me. So that's on the list of many things to do.
Okay, so the first trigger is the land disturbance and the amount of land that's being disturbed. A number, a percent, different areas, all of those questions come under that. The second trigger is the slope question. And when Keith and I talked about it earlier, we suggested that anything, so over 35% slope you can't build on.
Right.
So there's that. Between 15% and 35%, you need a professionally designed plan.
Well, ours is currently 20% to 35%.
Ours is 20, but maybe we need to.
Huh.
Oh, well, we're sorry, Chelsea. Can you hear? Yes? Okay, so you can hear, you just can't say anything. All right.
No.
Just keep track of your comments and we'll
It's not like you have any insight or experience on this anyway, but that's fine.
Right.
Oh, it's
You
one of
know I
those
was joking. Kids
computer
love joking.
things. We'll talk about it again. Believe me, we'll be talking about it again. We can't really read your lips from there, but anyway.
I can read hand gestures if you're really mad at me.
Okay, so slope. So the question with the slope is obviously an important factor. What are those numbers in
Well,
Wilton? Like it's
so
8%, but it's because it's so flat there.
I can,
Ooh, we hear you, Chelsea.
Every once in a while we hear you.
You're having
So
the same problem I am. I don't know if there's something going on townwide. I know it was all over Hillview Road this weekend where internet connections were really sketchy. So I've been missing a bunch of conversation myself tonight and just trying to pick up the pieces, but it's not quite as bad as Chelsea, it looks like.
okay, well, we heard a few words, Chelsea, but they weren't really connected to each other. Um, so, so those are the numbers that we have to talk about with slope. What, do we want to have this system where under a certain amount of slope, you just need the site plan, so long as the other triggers aren't, are being met? Is there a number of slope that you just need a site plan, and then beyond that you need the professionally designed plan? Is that the situation that we want to adopt for slope?
Right.
And then in the text of the regulation, there will be discussion about what to do about slope, what the best management practices are to a certain extent, and beyond that, you go to the low risk handbook.
Are there discussions of slope in the formal regulations for larger than 1 acre disturbance? Can we just scale that down, use those same slope numbers, but on smaller disturbance areas?
Well, we may be able to do that, and the person to ask turns out to be Christy Witters, who works for the permitting department of the stormwater people.
Oh,
So
great.
she's had some email input, and we might want to get her to come and talk with us about it and, answer our questions like that. There are references for the state's program, the stormwater management program. I have not looked at those because I haven't been able to get beyond the low risk, which is enough to read right now, but
Which is all we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with anything above that low risk. I mean,
right. But Mark was saying, can we take the same standards and apply them? Can we take the similar standards from the over 1 acre and apply them in the slope situation? So
It's hard to grasp slopes are versus percentages, when you're talking about it abstractly. If you can see something and say, oh, the sledding hill at the round church has got a 20% slope, then maybe we can try and wrap our head around it. But honestly, you got to hope that the civil engineers out there have already got impact effects of what slope is considered significant and requires higher levels of control mechanisms.
yes, well, that would be a great thing if you wanted to look into that state stormwater manual and see if they have slope recommendations. But we will, we can do that to
Yeah.
try to
There's a-
figure out.
I mean,
Is there-
there are formulas they use to make these plans, and the coefficient for slopes are installed in those formulas. So that is definitely something that I'm aware of when it comes to designing stormwater. When it comes to erosion and sedimentation, well, you look at slopes critically, no doubt about that, because you know that a silt fence that isn't, doesn't have a wire behind it is not going to hold on 15% slope. So that's why you need that designer in there to do that. Somebody who's professional and knows how to do that. There's surveying that's involved. All slope is rise over run. I mean, it's a really easy calculation, but you're right, Mark. How do you get your mind wrapped around that when you're walking up a mountain? What is the slope? This is 45, that's 90. But when you're walking on it, where am I? I mean, what's 20%? Well, that's about this. Well, when water's coming down that and it's impervious, oh my God, is there trees on it? That's the coefficient I'm talking about with slope also, is when that raindrop hits the land, what's the ground cover on it? Trees are the best. They diffuse that, they absorb. And obviously macadam is the worst. So that's my 2 cents when it comes to slopes and stormwater. There's a coefficient you plug in, I know that.
And that's, why over a certain slope, one would want to have the professionally designed plans, because we assume the engineers do know the characteristics that are important, the factors that are important to managing water on various different kinds of slopes. So what we would like to come up with is a number for the lower end of that. What is the one that you need a professionally designed plan? Any amount of slope, if you're disturbing land, you have to have the site plan, and it has to have the slopes on the site plan. So that's a start. And if they're low enough, then maybe you don't need to go to the expense of having a professionally designed plan. But, we want to make sure that we have the ones that need the plan have it.
And Ian's point, which I'm sure Chelsea will concur, is, how close is that slope to the edge of the property versus or a water source or a stream or something versus, in the middle of a dry area. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors we need to start wrapping our heads around. And
well, one of the factors that you need to wrap your head around is that you don't want any water going off your property, period. You need to account for your development on your property. Don't do what's happened to Chelsea. Don't do what's happened to many others, especially in the village with what we're dealing with right now. We're having some issues, and now we're going to have some serious snow melt here in the coming days. So you have to keep an eye on that, and Dante's been alerted to that. So we'll keep an eye on that, but that's not going to help anything at this point because there's no controls in place. So that's the impetus of all this, or part of it.
I have a question.
I
Oh, please.
well, this is Allison. I also think that the type of soil that's there is important. There are certain soils that hold better than others.
Mm-hmm.
And
believe it or not,
I don't see anything about that here, but is there a place where that's dealt with, Virginia, somewhere else? Or are we just talking about the angle of the land? Sandy soil will probably slide more than clay, and I think that actually does make a difference.
You're muted, Virginia.
Virginia.
Sorry, the dog was barking. So what I would foresee in this regulation is, for the construction phase, there are going to be basic requirements, such as you have to control water coming down from above onto your disturbed soil. That's one. Secondly, you have to prevent water leaving your area of disturbed soil. Now, how you get there is going to be, you're probably going to have to go to the low risk handbook, because we can't put every single way of approaching that problem into our regulation.
That's true.
For instance, the kind of soil is going to be a factor. The kind of vegetation is going to be a factor, So there are lots of different factors that are going to go into that probably you're going to have to look at this outside reference, the low risk handbook. It's pretty complete. And it talks about those things. And what I would hope for our regulation is we have a fairly small number of general requirements, like those two that I just mentioned, that then you can go and find out what the alternatives are for creating that situation. if you put them all in there, all the ways of doing it, then people's eyes are going to glaze over. You just have to have.
Ian's had his hand up for a bit.
Yeah, Ian, is that your same hand or is that a new
Not,
hand?
I have a question.
Okay, good. Yep.
Um, First, Keith, is the driveway slope standard 13%? Do you
Yeah,
know?
it's 12%, is the standard, and you can have it higher within 200 feet of your garage. There's some language to that
Right,
in the
right,
driveway standards, yeah.
yeah. Um, that seems like an interesting threshold. I don't know.
The 12.
Well, that has to do for emergency vehicles. I believe that's in their statute or something along those lines. It has to do with the first responders. They don't like to go above 12%.
Yeah.
I
Um,
remember the discussion on that.
and then
Yeah.
Chelsea made a comment about the slope at the Brown Church being 30 to 50%. I think it's like 26%, I'm gonna
Okay.
guess. And I'm gonna go down there and calculate it. So next time we get
Take your
together.
stadia rod and your level and
Well, I was just looking, there's apps, there's like phone apps. You can just stand there
Oh,
with your
cool.
phone and
Yeah,
Point your phone at it and
yeah.
get the slope.
I
Well,
don't know how accurate it'll be, but
it'll get you close, I bet.
yeah.
the 15% number is just found in a number of different regulations.
Yeah.
So that's where that number comes from. In ours right now we have 20%, but Keith is recommending that we go to 15 with these other, to fall in line with some of these other towns, not Williston where it's 8 but they're flat. So
I'm if I can just add something to that comment about the low impact booklet and referencing that for work. It's really
Oh,
iffy to be making reference to a non-regulatory document as a guidance for procedures that, I don't know how even legal that is, because they could come out, this was granted June 2025. It's fairly recent, but what if they make changes in July 2025? And we're holding everybody to this random unregulated, undocumented handbook.
Well, it's not supposed to be a regulated handbook. It's a tool that we can use for our regulations to reference. These are best management practices that have been utilized and perfected over decades. And they do continually update it. I mean, you might even see a level spreader in there. That would be great if they had that. But that's my response to you on that, Mark.
Does that have regulatory teeth though?
There's no regulatory teeth. It's just a tool to utilize for practices. It's best management practices. The regulatory teeth comes from our promulgation of our zoning laws.
Right. So
No.
we can't just say, oh, well, depending on the slopes as said in the handbook, we've got to say, depending on the slopes, and we define that type of stuff and
Well-
say, for additional information, see, but
Well,
That's what we
concrete can
currently
be
have that.
referenced in the handbook.
We currently have that promulgated in our laws right now that we reference the handbook when we have permits. That's already in our law.
because, so for instance, if there's a requirement that you can't have water coming from above onto your disturbed soil, well, there are a number of different ways that you can do that. So if you take methods that have been put out there by the Vermont, Department of Environmental Conservation, if you take methods that are state approved, we are going to, the people who are looking at this plan, our zoning administrator and our DRB, we'll get to that in a bit, but are going to have to say, if it's small enough, if these are acceptable, and the person who puts the application and the site plan in are going to say, okay, my slope is 8% and I'm going to use these methods to create that slope prevention of water running onto my disturbed soil. So the requirement will be there in our regulations. You are required to do this. But how you can do it with some different techniques. Once you get to the professionally designed plan, well, those people really should know, if it's big enough and the slope is big enough, we're going to have to trust them to do the right thing. So, Chelsea, your hand is up. Maybe we can hear you.
Although you're muted right now.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, I don't think I
muted.
can unmute her. No.
Okay, dang it. Okay, so she's still not.
So
So, look,
Dang
Chelsea,
it.
we'll be having this discussion more, and you're kind of more away. You're more aware of these things anyway, because you've looked into this. So, when we have something in front of us, we'll be continuing to discuss it further. Okay, so that's the second thing we want to find out the numbers about, the slope. What is the slope under which you can just have a site plan, which you need a professional site plan for, over which you can't do anything? Are those numbers what we want them to be? So those two things are going to be mostly related to the construction phase. You have to have a plan pre-construction. You have to abide by these regulations during construction. They're very important. The prevention of erosion. And then there will be the stormwater concerns, which also the trigger there is the amount of impervious surface that is going to be created. That's the main one, but slope will also be a factor.
Sure.
But so if you're going to create, either a number of feet, such as, let's say 500 feet, if you're going to create 500 feet of impervious surface, is it okay just to show that on your site plan and to show how you plan to deal with the stormwater? Then over that, maybe you need the professionally designed plan. Those are the options that we have for requiring this. Either just, if it's small enough, just put it on the plan and have requirements once again, but you can now go to the low impact development handbook, which talks about the methods, like having downspouts and swales and rain gardens and all of those different ways that you can prevent the runoff from your impervious surface.
I always like to term it as an a la carte menu for best management practices. It's a la carte. Now, some of them fit better than others, some of them, which I guess would be they taste better than others as opposed to a menu. So it's the way
But
I look at that handbook.
Yeah, there are certain categories of them,
Right.
though, that we're going to require that you meet the principle of not having the water run off your impervious surface onto your neighbor's land.
Yep,
So-
or even on your own to a certain extent, but yeah. But that's again, getting into the weeds.
Yeah, and into the town structures, like onto the roads and, overwhelming the system, which is why we need to have the highway department talk to us about what we've got, so that we can think about that, not destroying any downstream structures. So anyway, and the impervious surface one is the one that especially we're going to be talking about the village versus the outlying areas. Do we need separate regulations? And how are we going to arrange that when people are all living very close together? Obviously, the impervious surface question and the roads becomes more problematic. And the other questions that relate that we want to be thinking about the numbers for with the stormwater section as opposed to the erosion and sedimentation section are, what do we want the requirement for the storm event? What's the trigger? Is it a 25-year storm, which is what we currently have in parts, or a 2-year storm? and a 24-hour event. Given the intensity of the rain, we are going to have to come up with the numbers, those numbers. This has to be designed for, especially if it's going to be a professionally engineered plan, it has to be designed for a, what, 2-year storm, 24 hours seems to be a going number that people are gravitating towards. 25 is probably not good enough in this day and age of climate change.
I've also seen stormwater plans that just allow accounting for just 1 inch of rain in a 24-hour period also. I came across that a little earlier today also. So that's kind of the minimum right there, I would think. A 2-year storm, I'm not sure what a 2-year storm is. Maybe it's 1 inch, 0.7. I'd have to look at the tables, which I was trying to do before I got here, to give you a little bit more idea of what rain events mean. If you have a 2-year storm, it might be 1.7 inches every 2 years. That's an event that'll happen. 25-year storm might be 2.65 inches every 25 years. It's probably more like 4 inches. I'm not sure.
Right.
Look at it. But as you go, it's graduated, up to the 100-year storm. And there's nothing after the 100-year storm. I guess you can have the 500-year storm, but we just go to the 100-year storm. Well, we've had a couple 100-year storms recently. So,
yeah. And if you have a couple of 100-year storms, they're happening more than every 100 years.
So that's got to be updated. Yeah.
So this is why the numbers are getting smaller, because the storms are getting more intense and making more rain. And
now, this isn't a panacea whatsoever for covering the town. It's just really to make sure that it's part of an education tool also. So you need to take care of the water on your property, especially in the more built up areas.
Yeah, and this is why we're going to have a pre-construction piece to this, so that people understand about the site plan. These are the things that you're going to be held to. You're not going to be allowed to have the water run off your disturbed site. If you have this much impervious surface, you're going to have some of these low impact structures like rain gardens or tiles instead of driveway asphalt, tiles that are semi-permeable, or there's a lot of different techniques that you can use to help when you're taking up all your pervious open space with buildings. Then you're going to have to use some of these other techniques. So
it's amazing what a French drain can do. Honestly, I mean, French drains are a great thing too. So, and
they're under the ground, though, right?
Yeah, So it's on a drip line of a roof, goes down into a drain that underneath the water can infiltrate into the ground. It's designed that way. It's a pretty easy design. You install it when you're doing your project. I mean, it's not difficult.
Then that could be an offset for increased impervious surfaces where you don't necessarily have the ability to trap the water. I mean, we could use sort of a balancing act of, okay, here you are with what you're discharging now off of the square footage of impervious surface you have, but maybe you can put in a garage or a secondary ADU or something if you install French drains and then trap and sequester water runoff that's currently being generated.
Yeah. There could be a bonus for that.
Right.
I don't know what you could do. Maybe something off your taxes. I don't.
Or just a plain old requirement if you want to reduce you want to increase your impervious surfaces on a small lot. You have to create some sort of offset balance that you would
with what exists.
Even though you increase it, you don't increase your discharge.
Yeah,
that's the point. Yes.
Well, so I mean, all of these things it's necessary to educate people, applicants about this, but also the zoning administrator and the DRB. They need to be thinking about this when they're thinking about applications, which is why we need to have it all up front, written out, what this is going to be like moving forward into a project, which, we haven't focused on that much until now. So it's going to be a kind of a new thing, and we're going to need plenty of upfront work with this site plan business. The other question that's related to that is, what are the instances that the DRB would need to be involved in this? Is there a trigger that requires the DRB to think about this, or is it just the zoning administrator who's going to be thinking about it? And up to the point where a state permit is required, and then we assume the state is looking at all of these factors. But
Can I just
yeah, go ahead.
introduce? It's sort of a tangent, but we're talking about individual responsibility, individual property owner responsibilities and balances. But is there something we can do to push sort of a townwide stormwater remediation process or system? I don't know if we can necessarily write it into the zoning regs, and
Right.
so it's maybe not particular to the planning commission. Maybe we should hand it off to the conservation commission as a thought, but improving the town's stormwater recovery, which doesn't exist now. Everything goes straight to the Winooski in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's not a lot of infiltration, that's for sure. There's not a lot of biofiltration going on in the town, that's for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think our hook would be any new construction or like a renovation. We could have renovations or additions or any of those things will trigger this kind of review. Whether you can just do it for existing, I mean, they have this 3-acre stormwater rule is kind of it's the state program to assess existing properties that meet certain thresholds. So that's one approach that they're taking. I don't know a lot about that program right now. The select board has been dealing with it endlessly in certain neighborhoods. They need to kick money in. So for the stormwater, this 3-acre stormwater rule. Anyway, I don't know if you know a lot about that, Keith, or
Not the 3-acre, no. I mean, that
Yeah.
has to do with that's a large development for sure. And again, that has to do with your total maximum daily loads, the way they design it. It's a little out of my pay scale there.
yeah, I mean, I know that certain developments, like the Greystone development, that was developed as a development with a homeowners association, those people are, on the hook for having a total amount in the development of over 3 acres of stormwater. Southview, which was developed not really as a development, it was just a bunch of single houses that were built on Larry Westall's property. So, and they've been struggling with it because they have been, the state has come after them for it being a development that has over 3 acres of impervious surface, and they feel it is just a bunch of houses, none of which has over 3 acres. Anyway, I shouldn't talk about it because I don't know much about it, but the state is concerned about that.
That's the most instructive description I've heard of that, actually.
It's the what?
It's the most constructive description I've heard of the problem up there. I kind of like heard dribs and drabs at select board meetings. I could never make sense of any of it.
I know, you'd have to go
That
to
makes sense.
all of those meetings. Chelsea, do you think your sound might be working now? You can try it.
Let's see. Yes.
Yay!
Good.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
So no guarantees that I don't get infiltrated from the children I oh so love, but
You're at
But I'm
home,
back.
I take
but I'm
it.
back home, so here we are. Yeah, so I can't even track what the heck I was going to comment on other times, but in regards to some of the things that are just being talked about right now. Um, I think that I would some pieces of information that I would share with you are that um, from I guess okay, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. I'm unclear in how you're speaking, Virginia, if the intent is like we're trying to pick up this missed population, right, of people who are disturbing soil, 1/4 acre to an acre. And then just a minute ago, you said something along the lines of like, at an acre, we assume the state is taking over and, they're doing their thing. Um, and so I definitely am opposed if it is on the table to us creating regs that stop at an acre. Like there's nothing that says the town and the state can't simultaneously like both be doing something, both be trying to manage the same problem. And there's also nothing that stops us from being more strict, obviously, in that we are looking to pick up smaller disturbances, but also with our management practices and like be quote like, more strict. Not saying that we have to. I'm just like kind of putting it out there because from personal sort of research, the state isn't necessarily doing what you think they're doing. So just because the rules exist and the rules make us feel really good that we made these rules for water quality, I think that it is important to be clear that they are not functioning perfectly. And so that's why like I said, I'd be opposed to us stopping at an acre just because we kind of presume the state's going to take over there. And then let's see.
And I'm not sure that I was even suggesting that we stopped at an acre, but that it captures that population, but that doesn't have anything.
Right.
So, it's fine if we just start at anything over 1/4 of an acre and they're going to have to also abide by these requirements, but they're also going to have a state permit.
Yeah.
And maybe they're the ones that need to be reviewed by the DRB. I don't know. I mean, that's a question about what the zoning administrator can do and what the DRB can do if we need them. We don't want to put everybody through the DRB, but on the other hand, there are probably some that should go through the DRB.
I would respond to Chelsea by saying I agree with you how the state operates. There's no doubt about that, and that's if you can get them on the phone. The other thing that I would suggest is those plans that require state designs based on their rules. Maybe we should require that we have a town engineer vet those plans also, because we don't have that capability in our office. We would have to go to a consultant, and then you would require that, okay, any plans that goes through the state process needs to be reviewed by a town engineer. Something along those lines that may alleviate those concerns. But that is a true concern. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not, I don't know if it's a trust issue. It's more of an implementation issue more than anything. And maybe it's staffing, maybe it's the quality of the folks. I don't know. But there definitely is an issue there, Chelsea, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 100%, or well, at least a large percent, not 100, because it's not all inclusive, but
Yeah.
it is for sure a staffing issue. Just from the construction stormwater side of things, there's one lady who handles like all of Chittenden County. Like, what? Like
Yeah.
we have, one person for just Richmond doing all of our sort of zoning and the stuff, and like not even narrowly focused on one subject. But like one person on this subject, granted, yeah, that narrows it down, but like for the whole Chittenden County, it's like a very large, it's ridiculous.
Oh.
But
Yeah. Well, I
Oh.
mean, also the amount, 1 acre of disturbed soil is a big project.
Yep.
We're not going to have a lot of those. Certainly in the village, we're not going to have projects likely that are an acre of disturbed soil anytime in the next few years. Anyway, I doubt. But
Allison is actually
Well,
Yeah.
Chelsea, are you finished?
Hi, thank you.
Allison, go ahead. I'll
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chelsea. I think that this point is well made, particularly given the changes in the government in general and the fact that we don't have as many people to do the same jobs
Mhm.
that I used to get done by more people. And I think that a double check is not a bad idea.
Mhm. So you'd endorse just having a set of rules for over a small amount to
Well,
wherever, to
I,
whatever.
I don't know. I think there's also room for creativity and new ideas, but uh, I just want to make sure that I guess I'm concerned that with the reduction in the people that are working for the government now,
Mhm.
because of the current conditions,
Think it could be serious. Ask me to call
that
emergency services.
Yes, go
what?
ahead. Yep,
Yeah.
sorry.
Um, yeah, I just I don't think it hurts to have extra scrutiny there. I'll leave it like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So sorry, I'm trying to like backtrack on the last hour and remember what I was going to say to all the things that everybody else said. So, uh,
Well, there
I
will be more
sympathize.
opportunities. There will be
no,
more
I know.
opportunities.
I just wanted to throw a couple things out there that I
Yeah,
now have remembered. So
okay, good.
in talking about there was some discussion of like slopes and soil types, and um the slopes are addressed somewhat in the low risk handbook, but not so much in like that you have to follow it because of this slope. It's triggered solely by disturbance, regardless of whether your disturbance is on a low slope or a more like it's literally the amount of disturbance is what triggers that handbook. But within the handbook, like once you've gotten to this place, right, or say our regs that reference this, it then is slopes very much have impact in how the soil is stabilized. Like
Yeah.
controlling the runoff is not so much affected by the slopes, but like are you going to be able to just like throw down some grass seed and some hay? Is that good enough?
Right.
Do you have to then maybe put down some matting? You know, there's like layers of, you know, depending on how steep it is, the more help it needs to stay from falling apart.
All the way up to the point of riprap being installed, you
Yeah,
know.
riprap and yeah, yep. Yeah, the low risk handbook I don't think addresses I think it stops at riprap. I don't think
It's
it moves into retaining walls.
yeah, it has a lot to, it's a lot of vegetative controls, which is good, you know, for
Yeah.
sure. But,
And
So,
then
so do you think that that is going to require more specific points in our ordinance? Or are we going to just leave that up to the judgment of either the zoning administrator or the DRB if we decide, or a professionally designed plan if it's big enough?
right. Well,
How
the
are we
slopes,
going to address that question, Chelsea?
so like what they have to do, you mean?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, so I guess I when Mark was speaking about, you know, do we really want to just reference back to the low risk handbook and does that have sort of regulatory power? And I think along those same lines of thought, that the low risk handbook, when you um look at it as a whole, it can be a lot. But when you break down, like here's the main goals, right? Like the section that Keith has up right now, perimeter, runoff, stabilization. Like those are kind of your three main points in dealing with stuff on an ongoing disturbed project. And rather than just say like one or two things, like you were mentioning, silt fence or straw wattles, that's what those are called. Rather than only call out two things, maybe like there's not a ton, right? Like, so you said we don't like list everything. No, we don't necessarily have to list like everything, but it wouldn't really hurt. I mean, there's other parts of our regs that are like have a ton of stuff and they're super wordy. And looking here under runoff prevention, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's only 9 different practices. I don't think it would be a bad thing to just call out all of those and say including but not limited to, and then reference this handbook for the like actual instructions on implementation, right? Like, so we say silt fence in our bylaws, but maybe somebody has no clue what the heck that even is or how to install it.
Mhm.
Now, rather than having to have instructions on how to install silt fence in our bylaws, reference these, here's some references for you on how to properly install silt fence
Mhm.
or lock in your straw wattles, all that kind of stuff. Like, but just calling them out by name, I think is valuable because then people realize like we mean dice, it's not just like, oh, these two things. If we call them all out, it I think
Mhm.
highlights the importance of it,
Okay.
and then
And what,
also shows people there's a lot of different options just right from the get-go. Like they can look at our zoning regs and they can see, oh, there's 9 different things. Surely one of these will work for me
right.
and my project.
And do you think that specific slopes should be attached to those kinds of things? I mean, like for slopes under 8%, you might do these, and for slopes from 8 to 15%, you might do these. I mean, we wouldn't, I don't know how we would get that information, but we probably could if you thought it was important.
So I
And also there's
preliminarily,
the other things like the soil and the trees
yeah,
and stuff like
yeah.
that interact.
I guess so. My preliminary thought on that is that let's theoretically say we decide our threshold for amount of disturbance is a quarter of an acre,
Hmm.
right? Like regardless, just period, quarter of an acre, you're in no matter what. But maybe if you have slopes over at whatever percentage we decide, then you're in even if you're only doing 10,000 square feet of disturbance. Maybe we lower that threshold because we know disturbance on slopes is so much more sensitive. So if your activity is literally proposed on certain slopes, you're locked in earlier. And I think that will happen in other zoning if I don't know what the ultimate end game will be here with the regs or what everything's going to look like. But like right now, for example, it's picked up by the steep slopes section where it says if you have slopes over 20%,
Right.
you
Yeah.
have to have an EPSC plan,
Hmm.
and
Designed
and
by a professional.
yeah.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I think
And
that
so
comes
that's where
down
it's like,
to,
how do we incorporate that? Like,
Right. Yep. And that's another one that is, do we have a threshold that you just have to have a site plan? And then there's a threshold that you have to have a professionally designed site plan.
mhm.
And then
Right.
you could also have, I mean, you could have the DRB involved, but whether they would know any more than the zoning administrator or be able to make any different decisions is unclear.
I don't think they'd be interested, quite frankly.
Yeah, right.
But can we get a uh requirements that even on the if it's not professionally engineered, there has to be some sort of degree of competency? Are we ready to put that on Keith and Dante to do the technical assessment of whether it's a non-professionally designed remediation system to be adequate?
we're doing that now.
Are
So,
you
Yeah.
okay? Okay, if I don't know how well you guys are dialed into all of that, and there's a lot of nuance,
Yeah.
but comfortable with certainly you two guys having that authority if you think that you can.
well, it does take training. I mean, it certainly does. And this is my background. It's not Dante's. And he'd have to go to training. And, when I retire in 2 years, you'll have to get somebody else in and they'll have to be trained up. But this again is for small developments. And 9 times out of 10, Mark, it's a silt fence. So we make sure that it's installed properly because I cannot tell you how many times I've seen silt fences installed improperly.
Well, sure, yes, for erosion control
Right.
during construction, but when you
Yep.
get into stormwater, that I worry about being more technical. And I know we're talking about putting them hand in hand, but I also wonder if they're not sort of independent from each other. in that the storm
They are.
water
Yep.
is a whole different issue of soil permeability and the kind of things that it goes beyond just surface. You want to put in like you were saying, a French drain, that's great, but if you put in a French drain on into clay, it's not going to go anywhere and it's just going to back up and flow out. You know what I mean? I don't even know, but I'm just sort of
Yeah.
saying
Right.
those are things we have to factor in.
Those things are also relevant in the erosion and sedimentation, the kind of soil, the vegetation, the slope. So they are related, they're interrelated, but they'll have to be discussed separately in subsections of this section. And, the question about the site plan is a kind of a money thing. Do we want everyone to have a professionally designed site plan if they're going to put a garage on their property?
Yeah.
So certain amount of trust to the people who are doing the applying, making the application, to have a site plan that they have thought about and correctly identified what implementation they need. We have to have trust there. We have to have trust that Dante and Keith are going to be able to see, is that enough? Or, otherwise we have to have everybody have a professional site plan, which is probably too much for us, don't you think?
For a small
Yes.
project, yeah.
Chelsea.
Yeah, so I agree. Sorry, I was trying to find a pen. I agree. I don't think the burden of a professional plan for every project is appropriate. I do think that we would increase success in individuals submitting their own, self-drafted site plan. And if we have I don't know, I create stuff like this for work all the time, training folks, and some sort of we have them already in the zoning office, like a flow chart, right? Of okay, are you disturbing this much soil? Yes or no? And then next step, is your soil type A, B, C, or D? And if your soil type is this, you move on to these phase. And so maybe it's also phased implementation for even if you're gonna create your own site plan so that we can make development still accessible. We're not trying to stop development. We're trying to protect the town, the people that are already in the town, right? Development is fine if it's done appropriately and responsibly. And
so we can certainly help people do that with the
I think
application materials,
but I think requirements,
yeah,
but I think requirements also can be layered, right? So maybe everybody has to comply with some certain level of thing, but then it's, if you have this soil type, you have to choose not only one control method from runoff prevention, maybe we require you to implement two controls from the runoff prevention section, because your soil is far more likely to have runoff issues. And so then you have a first layer of defense and a second layer of defense.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It can definitely be sort of built upon. And I think that would be helpful in success all around, right? For people making their applications and knowing what's expected of them, and knowing what's going to get them through the planning and zoning process.
Yeah, and it would also help the zoning administrator to be able to review that stuff each time and come to more and more understand what is being required here. So I agree. Good educational work up front that is part of a checklist or something, or part of the instructions about making a site plan, and good.
And I think the same can go for the operation. I lean into calling them construction versus operational, because that's how the state does. It's all stormwater. One is construction, one is operational. And so on the operational or lasting measures, I guess, side of things, it can be similar, right? Things that we deem to be lower risk situations. You can look at the best management practices or the green stormwater infrastructure and say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put swales here and here and there and all around. But when your land is exceeding a certain coverage, like Mark said, or over a certain slope, then that's when, the professionals have to get called in. And quite frankly, I guess there would have to be some cost analysis on our side of things,
Mhm.
but this could be something that, in my opinion, like it's worth researching, like what are we comfortable with, um, almost br not bringing in-house, but like in-house to then mill out. What I mean by this, bear with me, is like, is there a middle ground where like under this amount you can draw up your own plan, we're cool, like we're good. Maybe there's this middle ground where like, you're getting kind of questionable, but like we still don't want to force people into these plans that are expensive. So maybe there's this middle ground of like, is having the town have an engineering consultant that takes the residents' plans they have drafted, right? Like using the planning and zoning's flowcharts and to their best of their ability, here's my great ideas for my property. Here's my plan. Does this cut the mustard for you guys? Like, because I have bad soil types and maybe I'm a little steep, is this good enough? And so rather than having them have to pay for the engineered plan, which means an engineer coming on their site and like all this stuff, like maybe there's a middle ground where we have an engineer that they have to pay the cost of, and it's potentially cheaper. I don't know because I've
Yeah.
never hired an engineer. So,
Right.
um,
Well, I think Keith actually suggested that earlier, is that there might be some that require being
That's to
looked
cover
at
the 1 acre rule, but yeah.
by our engineer.
Keith was talking essentially about like one engine, our engineer vetting their engineer's plans, I think. Yeah, this is more so like, I don't know, just like a backup, right? For the planning and zoning office of like maybe there's situations where it's a little more sketchy, but anyway.
You're getting into that Venn diagram, that that area that's, where, right there, which is probably the exception and not the rule. But we would have to see how that looks on a piece of paper from an administrative point of view.
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree that things will fall if we don't have that
Right.
potential.
All right. So I think that's probably good in terms of the time. I just want to do this second thing on the agenda, which should be fairly quickly. But are there any just final comments about this kind of introductory phase?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would
Um,
be good information to have.
Yeah.
For the
So
group, if you're not watching chats, my other half just asked, like historically, what percentage of projects in town would have fallen within these thresholds of needing a plan. Like,
Very
I don't
few.
know how difficult that is to, look at historical documentation. That's a lot of work, but like, maybe a small sampling, right? Like, to give us,
I could pretty much answer that. It's all commercial development and subdivisions. Anything besides that? I wouldn't say all commercial development either. I mean, that has to be triggered by the state standards, but subdivisions definitely, all subdivisions do get that. But
Yeah.
I mean, single family dwellings, no, not in the past, not a lot of ENS with them or
yeah,
stormwater.
so this is kind of new, and we've only got a certain amount of time and brain power to. It's just us.
So I would just leave it at this on this subject is Virginia, and I'm speaking for you, Virginia, as the chair, but we communicate quite a bit. We could develop a section, a draft section, and then start manipulating that in the coming weeks. I can't say I'll have that ready. I have, for full disclosure, my daughter's about to have a baby, so I'm probably not going to be out of touch probably for a good week or two.
All right, Grandpa.
Certainly won't be focused. Let's put it to you that way. Something that I would like to do is to go ahead and get that section drafted up, and we can piggyback off of what you did today or yesterday, Virginia, on that,
Yeah.
and present it to the commission.
I mean, I think we've gone over the basic.
Yeah.
We've got the concepts of the triggers, the 3 stages: pre-construction, construction, post-construction, which, if you want to call it operational, I don't know. Post-construction to me sounds more like what an applicant would say. It's the post-construction phase, the maintenance phase. And there, of course, the issues are we're going to have to consider how it can be monitored. You know, I mean, we don't want to put in too many things that are going to
Maybe
require a
it's-
lot of enforcement activities and monitoring. That's a compromise that we're going to have to make, like some of these other things, like trusting people to be able
Yeah,
to make their own site plans.
it's
So,
almost passive compliance, you know?
yeah, like most things in Vermont, it's
Yeah.
pretty
In
passive
Richmond too.
compliance. There's no enforcement. So, all
How
right.
legitimate is it to give authority to the for the to whoever, either the DRB or the zoning office, to mandate a higher level based on the person coming in?
You mean like mandate a professionally designed plan
Yeah,
or
you know,
mandate?
over these self drawn up site plans
Yeah.
by some hack who's just looking to cut corners versus somebody who you have higher confidence in their
Mhm.
legitimate effort to do the right thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's why we have to have some standards,
Mhm.
in there that are
And authority given
the
of
zoning
discretion,
administrator.
which the planning commission has always sort of been against discretionary authority because that can also be abused, of course, depending on who you have in the offices. But it sounds like something, especially in with stormwater, where there are so many variables that
Yeah.
there's a lot of there's a lot of people, it's a first time homeowner's never done anything, just looking to flip a house and wants to throw in an a secondary unit somewhere, versus somebody who's been in the town for 40 years and has been in construction and sort of knows their way around and holding the house flipper to a higher level and making that defined in a regular, like giving permission to the zoning administrator
To get
to
an engineer to look at it.
yes, to mandate an engineer where applicable, which is a scary thing because everybody's going to be like, oh, well, Keith doesn't like me, so he's making me get an engineer versus, oh, I'm a troublemaker in town. I always speak my mind. So, Keith is being harder on me than he would be on someone else. I don't know if there's, you know what I'm saying?
There's,
Well, I do, but I'm not sure there's a cure for that. I mean, I think it
Yeah,
is
I don't.
worthwhile to think about Chelsea's suggestion, and Keith also made the suggestion of being able to have an engineer look at a plan if you feel that it is not up to snuff. I don't think there's much point in having the DRB look at it because I don't know that they have a lot of competence in this area. I think the zoning administrator is going to be more likely to have the competence, but if we wanted to have someone, a higher authority, so to speak, to be able to go to with sketchiness, then I think having possibly a stormwater engineer, the way we have the town engineer, like Dave Rue, I mean, the town attorney, he's kind of on standby or something, or he's agreed to look at our cases. Do we pay him money just for each time we talk to him? I don't know, but we
Well,
could
we
have
have-
maybe an engineer, a stormwater person, or, who we could,
we get charged
Or giving more
$75 for him.
discretion to the zoning administrator.
what?
So we have that discretion right now.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over.
I'm sorry, we have that discretion right now.
Yeah.
That we have a line item in my budget of $10,000 for review, in engineering review. That typically is associated with the DRB reviews for larger reviews. That's why that's in there. But we do have a line in the permitting process that says, if you look at it's section 8 in our zoning regulations, that any other information the zoning administrator may require.
Mhm.
We're off and running with what we want to do there. If I don't like you, I have
Okay.
the ability to say, yeah, you need an engineer. That's not the way I operate.
No, of course
But
not.
that certainly is, somebody could operate that way, but we have that discretion right now.
We do. Okay, cool.
We do.
I was gonna point out the same thing and ask Keith if that's what I thought it was, that you guys can ask for anything. It's everything as requested by the zoning administrator.
It's gotta be
And
reasonable. Yeah.
and to speak one more step above to that is like if the applicant doesn't like that, if they're like, well, you're singling me out and I don't want to have to do a professional plan because my soil is the worst kind of soil, they always have the option to appeal that. Like if the zoning administrator says, I want you for these reasons, X, Y, and Z, to have a professional plan, even though, by the books, maybe you wouldn't have needed to, I just feel like it's necessary.
Mhm.
Then they either do that, they either do what the zoning administrator tells them to do, or they say, I don't like your choice, and they appeal to the DRB, and then it goes to the DRB level, and the DRB decides,
And
like,
that's-
either tough luck, Jerry, you have to get the plan, or push it
Or
back
no.
to the
Yeah.
push it back to the ZA.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then they can go to the select board if they don't like that. But,
This
I
is-
mean, there
yeah.
are
Yeah.
pitfalls everywhere in
Yeah.
this situation. So we can only do the best that we can. So, and we do have to walk that line, compromising between what's really going to be feasible, especially in the long-term aspect of things. What's going to be possible, what's going to,
One of the heartening things I'm getting out of this is you guys are really engaged in this subject. So I think that we could really move this forward pretty quickly too, and come to consensus on what we want to do. And that's extremely heartening. It really is. And that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, thank you for your appreciation of the value of the topic, and your
Oh,
inherent knowledge that you're bringing to this is going to be a huge plus. But I definitely think the commission is engaged to tackle this issue and get some resolution on it, which is nice. Hopefully it won't be something that drags out for too long.
yeah.
Mhm.
And do look at that Huntington regulation, because it's good for our size of town, I think. It's got kind of a good compromise.
Mhm.
And, we're
Written in a
starting
layperson.
from almost nothing. So it's good to kind of introduce something that's relatively simple and not too over the top. Okay, one last comment. Chelsea, you want to make a comment?
I was just gonna mention that there's something in the chat so that people go read it if they so choose, because I know not everybody keeps it up. Yeah.
Okay. So save the chat, read it at your leisure. All right, so we will return to this in one of our next number of meetings, depending on when we get something to look at in front of us. And I would like to go and see if we can't knock off the next item on our agenda, which is the minor technical corrections through section 5. I think we have just enough time. We can do it in 10 minutes, I think.
really? You're amazing.
So go ahead and post that up there, Keith, and we'll whip through it.
You see,
So
you see
that,
all the way at the very end of that 40 letter title, it says technical fixes PDF. I should put that in the front.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
All right.
All right.
So
So we're just going to look at these and make sure you're okay with them. And I think everybody is going to be okay with them, because we took out the controversial ones and put them in the discussion factor. So let's go to the red lines and we'll look at each one. We only have to get through section 5.
don't go blind here. Okay.
The scrolling fast.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No,
All
you're
right.
good.
First one is definitions on the index. One of my first comments was to remove the index. Virginia, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm for removing the index. We don't keep up with it, so.
We don't keep up with it. It's kind of it's a pain. But so that's the first red line, is to remove the index.
And we're going to put all the information in the table of contents, which directs people to go where they need to go for each section. So this is irrelevant.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, the index hasn't been updated in a decade or so. It's been a while. So there's so many new things that aren't in there. It's like, oh. And this is actually something that Dave Rue, our attorney, said, you should get rid of the index. So, all right, let me do this. I don't want to make everybody
Okay,
go.
so yell out or raise a hand if you have a comment about something as we're skipping through this quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, that's quickly.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
Okay,
I'm
stop
sorry.
when you see a red line. Okay.
So this
Okay.
is a nod to the classes of wetlands. We didn't differentiate in our zoning currently what the different classes are. We don't have class 1 in the town. There's only like a 3 or 4 in the whole state. 2 is the typical ones that are there, and 3s are the advisory layers or things that that we think that there's a wetland there, you need to do a delineation. So that's what that's about.
Yeah, and class 2 are the ones that are mapped.
Correct.
And the mapping people say there are a lot of class 3s that are out there that are not yet mapped. And we spent quite a lot of time deliberating over whether we could regulate them or not when we wrote this. This was written in Mark and my and Allison's tenure on this board. We felt we couldn't, with advice, regulate the class 3 wetlands, but the state has lots of information about trying to protect them because we're losing them. So if we want to think about, at least they're mentioned here, if we want to think about how we might better incorporate them into our regulations, that would be good at some point.
Mhm. Yes.
I just want to, let me back up here. So so this is a nod to the non-developable portions of land. Well, you don't want to put it in an advisory. You don't want to disturb the earth in a potential class 2 or class 1 wetland if it's, not mapped. That's the point there. All right, everybody close your eyes.
But
This
hard
is
to
just-
enforce.
This
Okay.
is just a technical fix towards what they are. Those sections were improperly cited, so we just updated it to cite them properly. These will most likely change because these sections are in conditional use approvals. For some reason, we're going to probably want to remove them from that. But that's another discussion, and that's a law discussion. That is not a technical fix discussion.
So this is just fixing it the way it is, even though we're going to work on it more later.
Right. Well stated. I couldn't have said it any better.
Hmm.
There's not a lot here. You'll see a few of these additions. I want to update this to the current edition right now. There's references to the traffic impacts and what you're supposed to use. You use a trip generation manual that is put out by, I believe, the federal government. And this is the 12th edition. 2025 is the current one. We have it from 2002 to 2010 throughout this whole document. I want to make it consistent. That's the purpose there.
Even though we can't always use this document because we don't subscribe to it and people don't want to pay, the town doesn't want to pay to subscribe to it, and you can't work off other people's subscriptions. But anyway, that's fine.
Yes.
We use the equivalent of it usually.
Right. So it's just like housekeeping on that one.
Can we just make a reference to the most currently available?
That's one way we could do it also. I mean, because what it had before was it would have this citation from some year, different years throughout it, or the most recent is what it would say. So we could just say the most recent. That's fine too. Either way.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody doesn't like that answer and they've got a better, more friendly version and a more current version, they can buy it for the town.
Yeah, it's like $800 or something to have
Yeah.
a subscription to this thing. It's expensive and they haven't wanted to fund it so far,
I mean,
Anyway,
they just plug these numbers into a program anyway. I mean, they really do. I mean, it's all just part of some type of program that they do at this point. So you'll
so
see,
I would be happy, Keith, also with just saying just the most recent.
and I think you're consistent with that. I think you had mentioned
Recent available.
that's
Yeah.
not a problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
There it is
Most
again.
recent on file.
There it is again. I'm so sorry. Whoa, stop.
What? Wait, you skipped something.
No, I just my key got stuck. I don't know where the hell I was before. Yeah, we weren't that far. All right, bear with me here, folks. Hopefully my key won't get stuck. I do have a new laptop on getting serviced right now.
Oh, wait.
So there's a couple of citations in here for dates that were not installed when the plans were updated. And it says, insert date of adoption here. Well, that didn't get done, so that's what this is doing here. So this specific one was for multifamily, I believe. And so that was done in 2023. So we're just putting that citation in the regulations.
And there's a few of those. adopted date ones that you will see for different dates, because things were adopted at different dates anyway.
So we just installed the correct ones, and those dates are up in the very first page of the document of the regulations. They just weren't put there. Additional multifamily housing. This is just to standardize what we're talking about, because the definition states 3 or more separate dwelling units, yet here it states more than 2 dwelling units. I just want it to be consistent. It's the same thing, it's just said differently.
Yep.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Dwelling.
So I think this is the only time that this is in there.
No, I think there's another. Oh,
There's
yeah,
another-
there's another place where it says it correctly in there.
Right.
So, and someday we may want to consider if that is what we want for multifamily to be 3 or more, or should it be 4 or more? Or, I've had people on the housing committee, they really want that number to be raised so that you don't have to have the multifamily standards for a 3 unit, for instance.
Mhm.
So that would be a way to encourage housing. So,
Are we talking about changing that now, or are we
no,
just?
no, no, no,
No,
no, no,
Okay, okay.
no.
No, that we just want to get the language lined up. That's really all this is.
We
And
are
that's the
not
same
talking
with-
about it now, but
So here we are with the trip generation. Again, that's throughout this here, and we'll change that to just say the most recent trip generation. Same again there.
Most recent version on file at the
Yep.
at the zoning
Right.
administrator's office.
at the what?
The most recent version on file at the zoning administrator's office.
We don't have a
That way
version.
we're not held to having to buy a new version every time someone comes in and says, "Oh, I want the most current version." Well, you want the most current version, then you buy and put it on file at the zoning administrator's office, and then we can reference that one. But otherwise, we're using the most recent one that we have on
Well,
file.
I don't think it works like that. I think it works that you take a subscription out to this
Yep.
trip generation program, and they send you whatever is the most recent one. For a,
But we're
like
using
for a
one
year,
now
it's
that's
like
outdated.
$800 a year. It's online. It doesn't exist anywhere else. You have to pay a subscription
Oh,
fee for
really?
it.
Language
You
is geared
can't
towards
download a
engineers.
version?
I'm sorry, this language is geared towards engineers. It's not geared towards us in the zoning office. It triggers when certain parameters are met on traffic, and that is typically under conditional use review.
Oh, so
We
it's
don't ever
contract.
require this. We,
Yeah.
Contract.
yeah,
Fine.
Engineering offices probably have the subscription.
sure.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to use the regional planning's version for a while, but we weren't allowed to by the rules of their subscription. It couldn't be shared. It was all very,
Yeah, I know all about that in the environmental industry.
right.
So this is Jelena Court. There was a typo that said we had approved 90% lot coverage on developable acres in Jelena Court. And the word 80 was still there. So I'm just updating it to say 90%.
The word was 80, the number was 90. I mean, I always wonder why we have to have both of those things. Do we need the word and the number? But maybe this is a reason, because, it makes you think about
Never
it.
list anything twice. List
Belt
it
and
once and
suspenders,
then
they call it.
reference where it's listed. Number one rule of thumb with document control.
I didn't
Again,
get that.
another-
Could you try again?
Stop it.
Another citation that was cited wrong. Cited wrong. Wow, that's a new word. So it should be 6.6 and not 6.16 on this.
6.6. Oh, I see it. The red is so tiny I couldn't see it.
Yeah, I should probably.
You
update.
guys all made that 90% rule, right? So you know that the
Yeah.
word is wrong and not the number.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we just don't like it. Not all of us like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's of the developable acres. So, but I know you understand that. It's still, it's about half. It's not quite half.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing we have to address at some point. The fact that Jolena Court District is the only one that says developable acre. All the
I
others
thought all
talk
of them
about.
were developable acres. Everything was designed to be developable
No.
acres from my days back where this discussion has come up before. So if it hasn't, then that's something we need to add to the list of, debatable topics. But my understanding is that it's always been developable acres.
Not
If
stated.
it isn't, we
It's
we
not
as a
stated
commission
like
need
that.
to discuss it.
Yeah, we should discuss it.
Yeah.
Because, we were told by Jess Draper, among others, that you could do it either way. You could either have it by acreage, but there were things that were not developable, like wetlands, but it was not stated as developable.
Yeah.
Or you could have it like Jolena Court, where it's stated that it's developable acres. So that is a whole long conversation, Mark, that we will have to have at some point.
Okay.
12th edition again here. We're almost done, folks. Bugging out yet?
And
Yeah, I
there's,
can't tell you how many town planners told me that it's developable acres.
well, in
I've
practice,
gone through a half dozen town planners.
yeah, I know.
And
I know.
I've been told on every turn, oh, we're talking about developable. Well, evidently we're not.
Well, I mean, in a way, you always are, because there are some things that are not developable, but it doesn't state that as the.
Yeah, but it gives you credit. If you
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
10
Gives
acre
you
parcel
credit.
and 9 acres is
Floodplain,
wetlands, you
wetland,
shouldn't get
big
credit.
slopes are all exempted. It was my understanding
Yeah, well,
historically, so you know where I'm coming from.
I do. I
And if you
know.
don't say that, then that could be you
It
could end
does.
up with some very different interpretations of what happens.
Yeah, well, it's a long conversation, Mark.
Let's
Because
have it now.
Yeah.
Hey, let's have it now, man.
No, wait for in person, okay? Wait for in person.
wait over some beer at the Stone Corral.
Right.
The beer and
Okay.
shots.
All
So
right.
under state permits, the language is antiquated. You don't call somebody anymore. You go through a portal. It's called the Permit Navigator, and I've installed a link to that here.
Nice.
I actually
and
have a,
it'll take you right to it.
let's see if I can find it quickly.
Bam.
So, and we can put that in the digital version of this also if need be.
That's brilliant.
I
We
did.
haven't done that in these regs, but we should do that for
Hmm.
like the small scale.
Yeah, we have it on the website.
Yeah, love it.
So,
So Keith, I was gonna that one that you're in on state permits. Dang it! I was gonna be able to call out the statute, but I can't because I can't find it quickly.
okay. sure.
Somewhere in 24 VSA, the 44, all the statutes that
Yep.
regard to our municipal planning and zoning. there is a statement I can find it and send it to you after this or
Sure.
tomorrow.
Yep.
That says that the zoning administrator, and I guess by essence our zoning bylaws, I feel like should also do the same thing. Has to let them know that they shall contact the, all that this says. But then in the statute, it actually calls out the language before commencement of any construction.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Like the statute actually says you should tell people that, like, sure, we'll give you this zoning permit and your permit's on and it's good, but don't touch anything. Do not put shovel to soil until you have your state permits in hand. So like it doesn't mean that we can't issue our zoning permits before they have their state permits in hand, because sometimes that process is longer and maybe they're not,
Right.
there yet. But recognizing that like we're not endorsing them to like start doing it by giving them our permit.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty squishy language here. For sure.
I'll send you the thing because I've found it a couple times, and I'll send it to you and see if you think it applies.
Please do. I mean, obviously you're aware that we can't administer those permits, but we certainly can
No.
hold ours up in lieu of those permits landing. I mean,
Yeah.
I
And
think
we,
that's the
We
intent.
all agree with changing that.
yeah,
So,
we have
not
had
like
this
that's a
discussion a lot
Yeah.
too, about whether you can require state permits for your permit, and maybe you can, we have said you have to have them before the CO, but what about
That's-
before
that's
the
the way we
shovel?
operate.
That's the compromise.
Yep. Yep. That's how we administer it is that's our only cudgel is the CO. If you don't have that state permit or you can't prove it to me, you're not getting the CO. But, people, have a habit of occupying spaces without COs. So,
Yep. So if that's really in the statute, we should have that in our zoning ordinance.
Yeah, please forward it. That's chapter 17 somewhere in one of those
Yeah, yep.
15,000. Yep,
I have it screenshotted on my phone somewhere. I'll find it after.
that'll be great. Appreciate it, Chelsea. Not much more here. Almost there. Getting almost there. Almost there. So this is subdivision review 5.4. What I've done is, this is a very short section. It just says, we have a subdivision review, and we have a document that you need to follow, basically. So what I've added C, because I feel that the followings have to be recorded. These are required in order for a zoning permit to be issued. If 3 lots are created, you need to follow the zoning administration. Boundary line adjustments require this. And subdivision regulations 800.1 minor revisions to the Richmond subdivision regulations would require a zoning permit also. Not necessarily DRB review, but a zoning permit. So once you look at regulation 800.1.
And our plan long-term is to put the subdivision reviews into the zoning. The subdivision reviews need to be just part of the zoning ordinance. It's the land development reviews. And I know we've tried to do that in 2012, but it's different time, and it's not the main, I don't think it was the main problem why that went down, was that the subdivision review was not incorporated in the land use regulations. It's ridiculous to have it standing separately.
I agree.
It's
At some
ridiculous.
point, we should just merge them and not change a single thing other than the merging of the documents.
And then
that's
eventually get around to.
no, even no matter how many errors we find, don't fix them.
Well, we've got to
Merge
fix,
them and approve them.
we've got to fix the master development plan to make it compatible. But anyway, we
Yeah.
could have a minor number of things that could be changed to correct and put them into this section 5.4 subdivision review. We can just put the subdivision review requirements right in there. So, okay, is that it?
Well, so that one's for the things that don't.
Require DRB approval.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what that's about.
Okay.
Which I don't know. I don't know that we need to do that right now if we're contemplating putting the whole thing in there, but
That's true. I mean, that's true. But again, consideration of combining the subregs with the RZR here, that's not what a change I'm looking to have happen. I actually want to take the subdivision and put it there. So we'll just leave it at that. I think we're going to beat a dead horse there.
Okay.
yeah.
There's a trip generation again.
So that minor revision thing is after the subdivision's already been approved. That's a minor
Correct.
revision to his.
Correct.
Okay. Yep.
You
I
don't
understand
need to
now.
go back to this DRB and get to get
Okay. Yep.
an adjustment.
Thank
to it.
you.
Yep. And I believe that we are coming. Oh, yeah. I wanted to stick this in here. This was a standard that was a little odd. I thought this is a specific standard under conditional use review. Any other standards such as natural landscaping and character to the neighborhood standards, if not associated with a residential review, because Act 181, you cannot use character of a neighborhood for a residential review.
Well, only certain
within Soil
ones.
and water in the districts that require that. Yes, so we can work on that language a little bit more, but is a catch-all phrase.
Yeah, and it's not any residential, but anyway, it's very specific in the
Water and sewer
regs.
districts. Yeah, the 181 just calls out the water and sewer districts for this specific one, I believe.
Well, and also that it is generally a multifamily housing. You know, there's a bunch
Yes,
of
it has to do with.
criteria that are in there as well. So,
Right. So keep in mind, this is under conditional use review, which multifamily housing would fall under if it's four or more, depending on the zone. So that's not crafted perfectly, but it does say, it does give you a klaxon that character neighborhood is not really applicable here. So we can work on that. This was the 3 sections I was talking about removing and putting them in a different section, their own section. This has to do with the extraction of resources. This is all under conditional use review for some reason. I don't understand why. They should be all under separate reviews, I believe. They might require conditional use review, but if that's the case, then why don't we put everything that requires conditional use review under this section?
Mhm.
And just a heads up is that my next ambitious goal, since the town plan is done, is to do the zoning ordinance correctly and to put things in their correct places. So be ready for that at some point, starting.
Beyond what Keith is referencing here.
Totally.
Wow.
It's not organized properly. The permitting section is all mixed up with the standards. There are a whole bunch of things that are problematic. So anyway,
It's a Frankenstein document. It really is. Well,
It's
I shouldn't
all-
say Frankenstein because that's the doctor. You know, it's a monster document, I guess.
anyway,
So I'm sorry,
So-
Keith. If you
Yep,
could
yep.
just go back to that though.
Sure.
Are you,
I,
what exactly are you saying you want us to do? Because I didn't understand that when I
Okay.
read your
So the-
comments or when I read this. I wasn't. Where
So
are we
these-
going with this?
So these three, 5.65, extraction of earth resources, 5.66, cottage industries, and then adaptive use, which is 5.67, they're all under the heading of conditional use review. Why they are under that heading is a little odd.
So I have a question. Are they all always conditional use reviews?
Those three would, I would think so, yeah.
So to me, that makes sense why those are here, because then the person looking at our zoning regs knows these three things. While these are not like while the conditional use review section is not all inclusive of everything that could potentially be a conditional use, these three we apparently have more robust regs for, and no matter what, it's always a conditional use. Because isn't section 6 where things like steep slopes live?
everything
believe-
lives in section 6. It's a jumble of this and that and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there are other items or uses that require conditional use review always that are not listed here.
So I guess I would lean, I mean, I'll have to think on that more because now
Yeah.
that I understand what you're saying, I would almost lean like the opposite, which maybe it's that's
Well,
that's my gut instinct now, but maybe it's after more thinking I would think differently. But like if there's things in section 6 that are always, no matter what, a conditional use review, maybe those, as opposed to pulling these out of here, maybe those need to be added to here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, absolutely, sort of. So-
Keith, what you're
So I
saying
didn't cross through
that-
these. I didn't cross through these. I don't want to eliminate them. I didn't cross through them, but I would like to
Yeah.
put them in a different section. Go ahead,
Where they
Mark,
should-
sorry.
Should live.
So you want to take these uses and put them with the other uses?
I would just want to get them out of the under the conditional use review and put them on somewhere under.
I think I know
section
the
6.
answer to this, but we don't actually have a place where like all the uses are in one location and defined.
No, but they're in the use tables of each district.
They're in the use tables, but then within the use table, most of the use tables aren't as expansive as these.
Right.
Yeah.
This is part of the problem with the organization of this document.
I get you 100%. I'm just saying either we create a uses section and then in the individual districts we identify what uses are conditional or approved. And then, under this section, really, we're just talking about the process of the conditional review.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
chew on it.
That's the
Is that
reorganization.
what you're saying? Is that what you're saying, Virginia?
Yeah, this is part of the reorganization that we have this, so extraction of earth resources, it's listed as a conditional use in certain districts. We've taken it out of some because it was in all the districts, including the downtown. Now, how crazy is that? So we've taken it out of some of the districts. We have listed it as a conditional use. So it will fall under the conditional use statute when it comes to be looked at.
Yeah.
But what it is these are the standards for these uses. So they need to go, as you said, with the other uses that have particular standards.
Right.
You know, all of these uses have standards. So, you know, my feeling, Keith, is I probably would leave it like this for right now and
Mhm.
just go with your earlier version of correcting the reference to it.
Okay.
And because there are these questions about what the best way to organize
I
this
mean,
is.
yeah, it certainly makes, I see what you're saying, Virginia. It makes sense to take all of our uses and any, you know, whether they're obvious and abbreviated or expansive like they are in this section,
Mhm.
put them in one spot. And
Yeah.
that's okay. That's a use. You want to find uses, this is where you go to find out
Yep.
identifications of what a use is.
The
Mhm.
standards for that particular use.
What defines it, and then whether or not it's acceptable or not goes in the individual districts. I kind
Right.
of see
And
what you're
then the
saying, and
procedure,
I see Keith's point on let's pull it now and put it in where the other stuff is. If we've got a spot where that it already exists, let's start doing that. I mean, I know it's not the end all solution that you're aiming towards, Virginia, but let's, you know, hey, it's one more step we can do in a very, you know, incremental way. At least it's not going to be, nobody's going to complain. It's just changing its location. It's not changing its content. Let's do it now and move on. You know what I mean? Let's just take these baby steps. It'll be one less thing we have to change when we get to restructuring the whole document. It'll be that much
Yeah.
easier.
I think this approach needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. What else can be put in there also? I mean, I don't know. I've stopped at 5. I haven't gone through 6, 7, or 8 yet. So, and I'm really looking forward to that. But we'll move on. We'll move on real quick, and I'd like to get going here. Boundary line adjustments. We always have to inform applicants that they have to get state sign off for boundary line adjustments. They have to go through the Clean Water Division or the Potable Water Division. So this is a pretty standard form that people go through. So when you do a boundary line adjustment, they want to make sure that the permit that's associated with a wastewater system is not compromised by this boundary line adjustment. So that's why it's called an exemption form. We attach it to the permit. It's not in our regs. So I'd like to get this installed in our regs because it's a state requirement.
okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Huh.
Any
That
more?
sucks.
Any more?
And then obviously I updated the citations for the other two. I think we are not done. This is a citation that is not needed. This has to do with accessory dwelling units or ADUs. So it says conditional use approval by the DRB under section 5.6 shall be required for an accessory dwelling for which any of the following also apply. Accessory dwellings is to be located with a new single-family dwelling in a district in which conditional use review is required for a single-family dwelling. I know of no district that requires conditional use review for a single-family dwelling. So it's moot.
Hmm. Yeah.
It serves no purpose.
Single use is either allowed or not allowed.
An ADU is only allowed with a single-family dwelling, period.
Right.
It doesn't require
in
conditional use
districts like
review.
the commercial industrial district, there is no single family use allowed. There is no conditional single family use allowed. It's just outright, boom, not allowed.
Correct. Unless you are on Rogers Lane where we've allowed them to do that in the IC. That's a carve out. But that's okay. This was installed here before we even did that carve out. It just doesn't make any sense.
So Keith, what about like when we talk about the village commercial district where single family is not allowed, but there are single family dwellings there?
Yeah, we discussed that earlier today, and that's a grandfathered use that would be allowed. Would they be allowed to put an ADU
So they don't,
associated with that?
yeah, would they be allowed to put an ADU and does it need a DRB conditional use?
No, they would not. Would they be allowed to put an ADU if a single family dwelling exists? Yes. I
But
think
they would not need a DRB review,
No, not at
even
all.
though that use is no longer allowed in that district.
No, I would think that, I think that when and if that happens,
Really?
which is a long shot, I would go to Dave Rue and ask him,
Yeah,
about.
I think statute says that our zoning cannot restrict an ADU, like
ADU.
anywhere where a single family home is allowed, we
So
have to allow the ADU. And I haven't done a lot of digging into like how that works with a grandfathered situation, but
Right,
I
exactly.
imagine they would side with somebody wanting to add an ADU.
Well,
We would allow it.
It's
We would
not
permit
an
it.
expansion of a non-conforming use.
we will have this discussion when
Yeah.
we talk about the village commercial district, because this is the
Okay.
exact situation there. Single-family home is
Yeah.
not an allowed use, but there are single-family homes there that might want to put an ADU perhaps. So
This
this
is
is
what
going to
makes,
come up.
We are running over time. I see your point.
Yes.
this is what makes zoning administration so palatable. Temporary structures, for some reason, they had wind measuring devices that you would have to have a permit for. Doesn't make much sense to me. These are anemometers that spin with little cups, or there's a weather vane. I just don't understand that. Is it the end of the world if it's in there? No, because we don't, but it just doesn't seem necessary. And also temporary signs, there is a carve out for temporary signs in the sign ordinance, so I'm not exactly sure that that needs a permit. So that language is not proper. See applicability within 5.7 is what I stated on that. Does that make sense to folks? Almost there. I know we're getting late here. Wind measuring devices.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're not huge. Okay. All right, so that's the end of that. And one caveat before we adjourn is that this has not gotten a lot of the things that need to be changed, but they are going to be discussed. So they're in the discussion list. I was looking at all the, like in the downtown development, the parking is not right. And, but any district that we're working on, little things haven't been changed. Like
Right.
the village commercial district, we're going to work on that. The village downtown, we have to work on that. Those have a lot of things that have to be changed. So anyway,
So stay tuned for section 6, 7, and 8, which will be sutured with this as a whole document at one point. And keep in mind, this is just technical. This isn't law changes.
yep. So, and if you study it further and come up with some issue with it, then be sure to note it down. And when we finish the whole thing, then we can bring those things up, talk about them again. So anyway, great. So I don't think we have anything else we have to talk about unless anyone has anything else they want to talk about.
Chelsea and I were talking at town meeting about trying to get more involved in in-person meetings.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, do we want to set up a meeting now that's going to be an in-person meeting? Do we want people to think about it for our next meeting to come with the times that they could meet? Like we're, in person? Do we want to have our next meeting in person? I'm open to any of those suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be in person. As you can tell, I really have success in operating from my car and also the library.
Oh dear.
I mean,
so
tonight,
sorry.
I think tonight actually wasn't so bad. I think my kids are very tired from first day back to school after vacation. So I had that on my side, that they didn't have as much vinegar and other fun in them. So
right.
Keith, if he's going to be out, I don't know. Are you going to potentially be out at our next meeting?
Potentially, I'm not sure, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Okay, so let's not set the next meeting,
No,
but
Maybe in April.
sometime in April.
Well, no, we
You have a
one
thing in
date.
April too. You're going away in April.
I really like the idea of like either once per month or at least maybe once per quarter,
Yeah.
where it's almost a mandatory in person where I get it. You might be on
Strongly
vacation that
suggested.
week and you got to go, but we all sort of agree rather than mandate that, okay, let's get together in person and have this meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So, I
let's
think
do it. When do you want to do it? or do you want to think about it for next time?
Let's see how Keith's
Baby.
Maybe.
works.
Is this your first grandchild?
Second.
Oh my gosh. I'm terrified of that idea.
Yeah. My sister's daughter, my niece, is also having a baby, exact same time that my daughter's having a baby. It's eerie.
Oh, great. Are they close to each other?
Yeah, a little bit, not terribly, but yeah, they're definitely acquaintances. They're
Across
one of a
paths.
kind.
That's great.
So
Well,
yeah,
that's okay.
so maybe the 18th, we'll see. Virginia, I think is the answer.
Okay, very good. We'll talk nearer the time where,
I might be at the town center if I can remember to ask Duncan ahead of time. So if
And the thing
anybody's
is starting the meeting on Zoom. That's really the hardest part if I'm not there, and that's not hard. So
right.
cool.
But Chelsea, you can always come to my house if you want.
Well, I turned towards you
Quiet.
tonight and thought I was going to just go crash your party. And I
Yeah.
thought that'd be quite funny. But there was emergency vehicle lights heading your direction. So I just,
Oh,
yeah, I turned my butt right back around at the far farms and I came back home.
But you're always welcome to come here, and we have internet and stuff. So
Funny.
All the amenities.
yes,
Wonderful.
all the amenities. And we don't kick you out at 8 o'clock like the library. So all right.
So,
So
in honor of Chris Granda's absence and it being 9:23,
yes, oh boy.
I would like to make a motion to close the meeting.
you would have been long gone.
I'll
All
second that.
right.
All right, our usual team of Mark and Ian makes and second the motion. Does anybody object to our adjournment?
No.
Nobody objects? So we stand adjourned, and we will see you all one way or another on the whatever it is,
18th.
18th.
It was a great meeting. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Take
All
care,
right.
folks.
See ya.